Which fantasy race is the first to complain about something, the most capable at resolving that issue, but the last to contribute? You guessed it, elves. Let's talk about how elves are basically what happens when you give a spoiled trust fund kid immortality and zero accountability. They're always the oldest race, the wisest, the most in tune with nature, the best at magic, the most refined culture, and yet somehow they're never around when an ancient evil awakens and starts terrorizing the countryside. Where are they when the world's ending?
Oh, sorry, we don't interfere with mortal affairs. We're above that.
Yeah, I'm sure that death cult summoning their god will just stop at your kingdom after exterminating every city.
After much discussion, the councils decide to postpone further talks until next month. The demise of half the known world has been tragic, but now is not the time for hasty decisions. We still do not know what this threat is capable of, and more importantly, we do not know yet if a random band of adventurers will wipe it out for us. I'd hate to get all prepared for war, march to the battlefield, and then find out that our presence was unnecessary.
Elves live for centuries and still can't get their cities restored from the last great tragedy from 900 years ago. Like, what have you been doing this whole time?
Oh, I've been charting the stars and composing harpsichord duets with dryads.
That's great, Dionysus, but the orcs are already storming the town center because you've never rebuilt that impenetrable gate that fell in the last raid. Maybe pick up something a little more sturdy than a harp to fend them off. Wood elves are basically fantasy eco-terrorists. They love nature. No, really love it. So much so that they will absolutely murder any non-elf race for cutting down an endangered tree species that they could have helped preserve a century ago, but couldn't be bothered until there was only a dozen of them left. They live in forests that magically alter those who enter so they can never leave, whisper cryptic messages that make them go mad, or just outright eat trespassers. And you're telling me the forest needs protection from a human peasant who just needs a few logs for firewood? Respect the forest, they say, while dropping a whole panther out of a tree to attack a wandering merchant. Calm down, Knife Ears. He was just trying to sell apples to the neighboring town. And yes, no harm came to that apple tree. Elves are the Mary Sues of fantasy races. They're fluent in 5 languages by age 12, have mastered 2 schools of magic, and somehow skip the awkward acne that comes with puberty. Their very few tragedies are usually self-inflicted and romanticized to the point that you can hardly be sympathetic to them. Oh no, our ancient city was consumed by flame when we flew too close to the sun in pursuit of beauty. Yeah, my city was consumed in flames by that dragon that you guys just ignored for 3 centuries. You can't even talk to elves in game without it turning into a lecture about some barely relevant piece of elven lore about the one time you guys were actually useful a millennia ago. Like, we get it. You're educated on this ancient opponent we had to drag you here to confront. The barbarian just needs to know where the monster's weak point is so he can swing at it. We don't need a full dissertation. And now we get to High Elves, the biggest offenders. These guys act like they built the world by hand and were nice enough to let the rest of us rent space. You were just the elves that came first, and honestly, what you've accomplished with this much of a head start isn't impressive. They look down on literally everyone, including other elves. Humans are crude, dwarves are drunk, halflings are simple, tieflings are demons, and dragonborn, well, okay, everyone hates interacting with dragonborn. And yet somehow, despite all their magical knowledge and ancient wisdom, they still manage to get enslaved, mind-controlled, corrupted, or blown up in every other campaign setting. How can you be the wisest race and still fall for the same catastrophes over and over? Have you ever noticed how elf architecture always seems to involve carving out and cramming in a bunch of junk inside those ancient trees they claim to want to protect so much? It's always white marble, glowing blue crystal, and then they treat those poor overburdened trees like it's an accent wall. Okay, cool. Can you design a decent bathroom, or do I need to go behind a different, less ancient tree and hope it isn't one of those sentient ones that'll attack me? Let's not forget how their weapons are elegant with exaggerated curves and their combat styles graceful because elves want you to know that they aren't even really trying to win in combat. They would rather die than do something the practical way, and all their talent is wasted on a race who thinks it's beneath them to fight at their full strength. Elves are always stacked. High dexterity, great perception, resistance to being charmed. They don't sleep, they trance. So while the rest of the party is rolling for watch shifts so they don't lose sleep and setting up traps around camp, your elf is sitting cross-legged by the fire, rubbing it in that they could take a double shift, but it's not their fault you have weak mortal bodies. Wait, you're telling me that you heard the ambush approaching camp and didn't say anything?
I didn't feel like helping.
Despite being immortal, beautiful, and gifted, every elf has the emotional depth of a Tumblr post from 2009.
My heart is burdened with the memories of a forgotten age.
Dude, you broke up with them a century ago and literally 100 girls want to date you. It's your choice that you're single. Stop fishing for attention. Every elf is secretly carrying some great burden, some lost love, or ancient duty. You know what would be refreshing? An elf that's just actually fulfilled in life doing some hard labor, not just some self-loathing art school dropout who will never find purpose because then the art will suffer. I'm suffering enough listening to you, buddy, and I haven't even seen your art yet. So yeah, elves, the fantasy equivalent of the kid in your college class who brings up philosophy to flex their intelligence unprompted. Every setting has them, every player's tried them at some point, and every dungeon master hates that all elves have dark vision even though most of these guys don't like caves. They're better than you and they know it. That's why elves are fantasy's most successful races. If you liked the video, make sure to check out my other releases on the channel and subscribe because I'll be releasing a ton more of these. And if you want to support the channel, you can get 10% off when you use code LootGoblin at gamersupps.gg. Be sure to try out the flavor of the day called Good. It's perfect for elves that think they're better than everyone else at the table, or if you just like cherry slushies. If you want a free sample before you buy or caffeine-free versions of any of the flavors, my link works for that too. Farewell for now.